More equation solving. We're going to look today at can I solve multi-step equations? And when we look at this, can I solve multi-step equations? I cannot stress enough the importance of these 5 steps. I know you keep seeing them on every video I've made, and these are the 5 steps we're going to go through. These 5 steps, we're actually going to have all of these steps today. So this is even more important to write these down and make sure we understand the order of them. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I have 3 examples for you. Example, the importance to have this written down on a piece of paper. Go over it, look at it, memorize it, all 5 of those steps. Have a good one. This example we call when we have letters on both sides. So we have a variable, we have variables on both sides. Okay, so there's letters and they're on both sides of the equal sign. Let's go ahead and draw that line. That's step 1. Change all subtraction. I cannot stress this enough. All subtraction needs to be changed to addition. Add the opposite. So step 1 was draw the line. Step 2 is change subtraction. Step 3 is distributive property. Do I have parentheses in the distributive property here? And the answer is no. Step 4 is combine like terms. Do I have any like terms on the left-hand side? No. Do I have any like terms on the right-hand side? No. So we're now getting ready to move. But what you're going to notice is I've got a letter on one side and a letter on the other. We need to get our letters together first. I'm going to move that -3. And here's why. I know the opposite of a -3 is a +3. So I'm dealing with positive numbers. Since we are moving the entire term, we want to take the x with it. So we're moving the entire term, take the x. We're going to add it to the other side. Remember, we can put a 1 in front of the 1x. So we are moving the entire thing. We can add 3x to both sides. So we get 4x plus, bring everything else down, 38 equals 86. And when we did those opposites, they cancel out. Opposites are 0 when you add them together. So now it's a 2-step equation. Now we just have to get the letter by itself. So first we got to get the letters together, which we just did. And now we got to move to get that letter x all by itself. So the opposite of a +38 would be take away 38. Whatever we do to one side, we want to do to the other. And when I have an 86 take away a 38, I have a 48. And I still need to make sure that I get my letter x by itself. Remember that now I'm splitting my 4 and my x up. I'm undoing this operation, and that operation is multiply. And to undo multiplication, we are dividing, and we get x equals 12. Remember when we divide both sides by 4, that 4 divided by 4 is 1x, and I get 12. So that's an example of when you have variables on both sides of your equation. Okay, variables on both sides. Let's go ahead and I'd write this example down so that you can, when you look at your practice problems, you can reference it if you have a problem like this. Let's go ahead and look at example stress. So again, draw that line down the equal sign. We have a lot of negatives here. We want to change all our subtractions to add a negative. All of them. Okay, now step 3 here is to apply the distributive property, and we have the distributive property in this problem. This is why we practiced it a couple weeks ago. So we need to distribute the -5 to everything inside the parentheses. So we're gonna get a -5, because -5 times 1 is -5, plus -5 and -1 is a +5 and the letter U. We're gonna bring everything else straight down. 4U plus -8. And now we actually have a problem that looks just like the problem we just did, where we have letters on both sides. Now we want to get those letters together. I'm going to move my 4U on this one. I'll give you a hint. I always like to move my smaller number, or I always like to move my negatives. So 4 is smaller than the 5U, so I'm going to move my 4U. It's a +4U. The opposite is subtract. You are moving the entire term. You are moving the 4 and the U, which is why we do the opposite of a positive, which is a negative. So it cancels on the left, and you're left with a -8 equals -5 plus 1U. That's what we want. But we still have that -5 over there. So in order to get rid of my -5, the opposite would be to add 5. So I get my 1U by itself, and my 1U equals, and if you do a -8 plus 5 on your calculator, you get a -3. Please use your calculator. Work straight down your paper. Yes, this took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This took 6 lines of your paper. That's okay. Work straight down your paper. Okay, let's look at our last example. I cannot. Let's go ahead and always start with drawing that line down the equal sign. I have some subtraction that needs to be changed to add a negative. And then do we have the distributive property here? I know some of you are probably thinking, oh, I see a parenthesis. Well, I do too. But what do we see right in front of that parenthesis? It's the number 1. So there's nothing that we have to do. If we take 1 times x for the distributive property, we get x. If we take 1 times 4, we get 4. Plus, bring everything else down, -4x, 1 plus x on the other side. So not really sure why they put parentheses around that 1, so I just wanted to make sure. That is the distributive property of just a +1, which does not change the value. Now this one, we do finally have a step 4. Step 4 is, do I have like terms? Let's take a look at this left-hand side. Do I have like terms that can be combined? And yes, we do. We have these 2 terms. They are on the same side of the line, so just add them. A 1x and a -4x, when we combine those, is a -3x. Bring down your +4 equals 1 plus x. And I want to stress that as I do each of these steps, I'm only looking at the last step I did. So right now, we don't need to be looking at anything that was written in black. We are solely just looking at this line and thinking, what can I do now? Okay, so we're only looking right here at the blue writing and what is my next step. So I drew my line down the equal sign, changed all subtraction to addition. Step 3 is distributive property. I've done it. Step 4 was combine like terms. I just did it here on the left-hand side, right here. We did that. And now we're to the moving process. We need to move. And what we want to move in this situation is we want to get the letter X's together. We want to move the whole thing. I told you if there's a negative, I like to move it. So I'm going to move my negative 3x. I'm moving the entire term. Take the x with it. So I am going to add 3x to both sides because I'm taking the entire term. I'm left with a 4 on the left-hand side. I'm left with a 1 plus 4x. And now we want to go ahead and we want to move I'm looking at now this last row. Remember, we're always dealing with what we just did. Okay, we don't have to go back and look at anything else. So now I want to move the 1. The opposite of a positive 1 is a takeaway 1. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So I have 3 equals 4x. I've almost got that letter X all by itself. Now we are going to break apart the 4 and the X and undo that operation, which 4 times X, the inverse would be divide. And your answer here is actually a fraction, and that is okay. Just leave it as a fraction. Just leave it as a fraction. And with that being said, those are our notes for